Hey everybody, this is week 3. First of all, congratulations. You're halfway through. That's wonderful. That's a lot of work. So hang in for this. This week is the last really thick week in terms of a lot of stuff that you got to get through. Next week, the last week, is not as much content. So try and push through and make this a very strong week. It's a lot of interesting content, I think. You've got civil rights, you've got the bomb with Cold War stuff, Cuban Missile Crisis, Kennedy, and then Vietnam, which is all of that is interesting and tragic, and lots of hopefully some more familiar stuff too this week. Overall themes, this time period, as you move through the chapters, you're going to see a lot of these issues woven together, and that makes sense because there's a lot of turmoil and crisis that's dealing with issues like the bomb, wars that don't make much sense anymore. It's more complicated, and this is all dovetailing in with civil rights, which is also very frustrating. So this is a lot of upheaval and some really painful moments, and they're all connected. So in terms of time, this is also a very compacted time, and these moments are certainly connected. Couple little notes that I want to mention. Watergate is in your last chapter for this week, but we're not going to do Watergate on the test. That's going to be for next week. The Watergate scandal is dealing with Nixon, and that's the beginning of a conservative era. So we're going to talk more about conservative politics in the last week, along with terrorism and 9/11. Yalta in Potsdam was at the end of the World War II chapter, but we're going to be picking up with that because this is really the beginning of the Cold War, and that the dissolving of the relationship between the United States and the Soviet Union. So that was at the end of the last chapter, but we are going to talk about it this week. That's a part of your content for this week. Also, I cut the second Red Scare. The first Red Scare was in 1919, if you recall. It's really interesting, great stuff with McCarthy, but you've got a lot of content, and while it's wonderful and interesting, it's not necessary to get us where we need to be. So you're not going to be responsible for the second Red Scare. I think everything else is pretty straightforward and self-explanatory. You've got the Kennedy administration and Lyndon Johnson administration. Those politics are also part of the Cold War and civil rights. So you have a separate outline for that, but that's certainly a part of both of those topics for this week for the Cold War and for civil rights. So see those connections and see how Cold War pressures and Cold War thought is affecting the civil rights movement, and how the consequences of the Cold War are going to take us into Vietnam, and how the frustrations with civil rights in Vietnam are going to boil over into the 1960s and begin to take us into the 1970s. Okay, thanks.